The Hill isn't anyone's idea of a day at the beach. Oh, it's hot and it's sandy as it's set in a North African prison camp, a prison camp for British soldiers run by the British Army. The hill is the rack, a man-made hill in the middle of the prison camp, used to punish the layabouts, the dregs, the spivs, the deserters, or anyone else the screws fancy for a bit of stick, and they like using their stick. The movie was directed by Sidney Lumet, who is a dab hand at high-voltage melodrama, as he proved earlier in Failsafe. And that brings us to 6 Degrees of Separation time. I saw The Hill at the Park Plaza Theater, where a few years earlier I had seen Failsafe, the same theater where director Stanley Kubrick had shot some scenes for his first independent film. Both of us were Bronx boys, both of us were early shutterbugs. Well, you get the picture. But Sydney, that 360-degree shot from the top of the hill where we can see the shadows of the camera crew and the umbrella, it was probably unavoidable for any number of reasons, but it's things like that that gave Sidney the rep for being fast and sometimes a bit sloppy. But actors love him, and actors tell the story. Based on a novel by Ray Rigby, this movie probably would never have been made without Sean Connery, who was at the height of his James Bond fame and eager to break that particular mold. He stars as Sergeant Joe Roberts, an Army lifer who's convicted of desertion under fire and the only survivor of his squad. There is a scene late in the movie after he's been beaten and brutalized where he just totally loses it, and you can't quite tell if it's the actor or the character, as he's stepping on his own lines, and yet they dovetail perfectly with the character's rage at the stupidity he sees. Yeah, he was in the moment. Or was he? Doesn't matter. You can't take your eyes off him, or what one critic called his inhuman charisma, which is on full masculine display in this movie. Sharing his cell is the great Ossie Davis, as the only black man in the entire prison camp. The scene where he jumps into the camp commander's office and tells him who really killed Stevens is one of the film's highlights. And then there's the great Roy Kinnear, fresh from the Beatles film Help, but instead of playing a mad scientist fumbling assistant, this time he's a petty thief and black marketeer named Bartlett, who got caught flogging tires to the logs, as he puts it. And then there's Jack Watson, a knuckle-headed bruiser named McGrath, who's really jelly inside when it comes to his betters, and that means anyone in authority. Finally, we have Alfred Lynch as Stevens, who's small and soft, and the obvious sacrificial lamb this movie needs to light the tinderbox. Overseeing this inferno is big, beefy Harry Andrews as the camp's regimental sergeant major, or RSM. He runs the camp while the commanding officer is off to the fleshpots of Cairo, or whatever's the nearest town. New to the prison is Staff Sergeant Williams, played by Ian Hendry. He's a small man, eager to prove himself tough enough for the job. He's also a sadist, whose actions eventually causes Stevens' death and a near riot in the prison. Ian Bannon plays Staff Sergeant Harris, who's friendly with the prisoners, but increasingly concerned by Staff Sergeant Williams' actions and the RSM's efforts to cover them up. There's a homoerotic theme running throughout the film, as there are in most prison movies, and not just in the scenes with Stevens, but perhaps more subtly in the scenes between the RSM and Staff Sergeant Williams. Talk about a power game that dare not say its name. You know, perhaps those boys should work it out amongst themselves instead of inflicting it on the prisoners. But then, that's what the prisoners are there for, isn't it? To be punished. But it's like Connery says, even the screws are doing time. Michael Redgrave is the camp's medical officer who's bullied by the RSM. But Stevens is dead and Robert's badly beaten, and by God, he's going to do something about it. Finally, with Harris's urging and support, they're going to lodge an official complaint against both Williams and the RSM. But after they leave the cell, Staff Sergeant Williams arrives to bully them once more. The prisoners beat Williams to death as a crippled Connery begs them to stop. Whatever chances their grievances had about being taken seriously or even heard are now gone forever. The system has won. These men are broken. And by movie's end, so are we. See you around the cell block.